Hi, I'm Rachel. Well, as I could have predicted, I am not yet ready to film my review of the Sammy Rohr 2010 nominees that I read this month. I just finished the second book, and I'm intending to read the third book over the weekend, so I hope. The Sammy Rohr Prize is a prize that's awarded annually to an emerging Jewish author in fiction or nonfiction, and last year I reviewed all of the fiction years, 3 titles per year, and this year I'm attempting to review nonfiction years. It's a little bit more of a struggle. I'm not as used to reading nonfiction, and it's going a little slower, but sometime next week I intend to script and film a video review. But in the meantime, I figured I'd want to film something else this week other than an Am Reading update, so I thought I'd go into tags that I haven't been tagged in, but that might be of interest to me. This tag actually goes into more random, non-booky, and more personal questions than is my usual on this channel, but I thought I might take the plunge and try it out. It's been going around parts of adult booktube lately, so why not join in the fun? This is the 50 questions you've never been asked before tag. Question 1 is, what is your favorite candle scent? At the moment I don't think I have one, but when I was a teenager I was pretty much in love with scented candles, and I had them all over my room, and pretty much every time I was in the mall I was going into Yankee Candle Shop and, you know, taking big whiffs out of all of the candles until I couldn't smell anything anymore, so I get the appeal. Question 2 is, which female celebrity do you wish was your sister? I think I have a bit of trouble actually taking this question seriously. I don't really have any real answers, so on a whim, just tonight I was watching part of my favorite teen high school movie, 10 Things I Hate About You. It came out when I was in high school. There were a lot of 90s high school movies that came out around that time, and, you know, nostalgic love. So I thought I'd go for characters from those movies. So for my celebrity sister, I thought I'd go for Katarina Stratford from 10 Things I Hate About You. She was maybe not so much the person I'd want to be my sister, or maybe I wanted to be her, you know. She was so confident and so cocky in how she put down Ernest Hemingway in English class and wanted to read more female authors instead. And admittedly, for a long time, I really did, I might still do it, model my life and my fashion choices after her. I loved the long skirts that she wore, but she was a lot taller than I am. And I loved her girl rock music, and in fact, the band from the movie, I tracked down their real name, and it's Letters to Cleo, and I have a few of their songs on my iPod, so... And I don't know if I actually could have pulled off the self-confidence to be Katarina, so maybe she would be good as a older sister role model. Then question 3, of course, is which male celebrity would you want for your brother? So my favorite of the male characters of these teen movies was probably William from Can't Hardly Wait, played by Charlie Korsmo, I think it was. And he was the nerd who wanted revenge on the jock who made his life miserable throughout high school, and Can't Hardly Wait took place in one night on a party that happened on graduating night from high school. And his plan that's like intricately mapped out is to lure Mike Dexter, the evil jock, into like a compromising position and take pictures and ruin his life. But instead, William gets very drunk, and funny things ensue when his plan goes off the rails, like when he passionately sings a Guns N' Roses song, and he and a drunk Mike Dexter actually find common ground, and he was just such a goofball. I was just absolutely in love with that type of character, especially when I was in high school myself. Question 4 is, how old do you think you'll be when you get married? To be honest, at this point in my life, I don't think I am going to get married. I think that I haven't had any type of relationship so far in my life that marriage would be something that would be an option. And I'm not necessarily naturally predisposed for romance and to get into those sorts of relationships, but I won't take anything off the table in the future. It's possible that I might meet somebody and something might come up, but given my life so far, I don't think that's in the cards for me. Question number 5 is, do you know a hoarder? Well, not in the technical, literal sense, no. I am certainly one of those people that holds on to things and has too much clutter around my condo that I'm not showing you for a reason, but that's not an actual technical problem, like in medical terms. Question 6 is, can you do a split? I never have been able to, although I have a memory once. I was in a children's chorus for several years, a prominent one in Maryland, and there were several different acts that would go on for our recitals, and one recital I was waiting in a band room with the rest of my group, and I was sitting on the floor in the middle and scooting my legs back as far as they would go. Probably not very far. Question 7 is, how old were you when you learned to ride a bike? Admittedly, I never have officially learned to ride a bike. Don't have the best balance. Question 8 is, how many oceans have you swum in? And I believe that would be 0, although I have traumatic memories of my parents attempting to drag me into the Atlantic Ocean. So. Question 9 is, how many countries have you been to? Not too many. I live in the United States. I have my whole life. I've been to Niagara Falls in Canada and have looked over the border in San Diego to Mexico, which is quite shameful in the way of being neighborly to my 2 neighbors. I've been to the airport in London en route to other places. I've been to Italy twice. I have family that lives in southern Italy, so I went once when I was in high school and once 10 years later, mostly to visit them and to sightsee with my family. And I've been to Israel once. Question 10 is, has anybody in your family been in the Army? Or I think it is actually, is anyone in your family in the Army? And the answer to that one is no. And I guess technically not the Army, but I do have veterans in my family from the Marines and the Navy. Question 11 is, what would you name your daughter if you had one? Again, I do not believe that having children is in the cards for me, but I was reminded of when I was in middle school and was doing the dreaming up what your kids would be named, and this was most definitely in my non-Jewish phase of life when I was flipping the bird to Judaism, because I wanted to name my daughter Margaret Elizabeth. Question 12 is, what would you name your son if you had one? And in a complete 180, for a long time I wanted to name a son Benjamin Joseph. They were the 2 biological sons of the matriarch Rachel, who is a very prominent figure in Jewish liturgy. Question 13 is, what was your worst grade on a test? And I'm certain that I got F's in my life before, and during that time in my life they were a big deal to me and I'd get very bent out of shape about them, but I guess one of the nice things about getting out of school and moving on with life is how I'm not beating myself up anymore about where I stand in the pecking order of your grades. Question 14 is, what was your favorite show when you were a child? I know that I grew up watching a lot of PBS type shows, and I think my sister's favorite show was Zoobilee Zoo, and she remembers lyrics and things from that. But a show I figured I would highlight is one that I started watching as a preteen on Nickelodeon in the mid-90s. It was called Space Cases, and it was co-written by Bill Mumy. I will try to keep away from the Will Robinson jokes, but it was definitely in the light of some old sci-fi classics. I mean, that he was a co-writer, and there was definite influences from classical science fiction, like there were characters named after Ben Bova, and William Takei actually came to play one of the major villains on the show. He was like covered in scales. He was a lizard creature. And the premise of the show was these 5 kids that were from different planets around the solar system, and one from Andromeda. You know, they're in a space academy in the future, and they're all the delinquents of their class, but a random alien spaceship docks at their school, and they decide, of course, to get on and investigate, and then they and a couple of teachers are blasted into a wormhole or into hyperspace and end up being 7 years away from home, and the premise is they have to, you know, learn to become a real team and grow up as they chart their course back home. Oh, and it was so much fun, and I loved it, and it most certainly was what opened up the world of science fiction to me, at least in the TV movie landscape. Question 15 is, what did you dress up as on Halloween when you were 8? And I do not have a memory of this, although I do have a memory of being incredibly vigilant, and I had a list that was pinned to my corkboard when I was a child, and I planned out Halloween costumes like years in advance. And now I have that sort of dedication when it comes to my monthly book reading lists. Question 16 is, have you read any Harry Potter, Hunger Games, or Twilight? I have read all of the Harry Potter novels, and even on Adult BookTube, I believe I can get away with saying that I loved the books, and that I know that a fair amount of Adult BookTube even loves them too. I've also read all of the Hunger Games novels, and in an opinion that probably veers away from a lot of Adult BookTube, I also really love these novels. I continue to read a lot of YA, especially in fantasy, and I enjoy those books, and I find them to be thoughtful a lot of the times. But for me personally, the Hunger Games series touched me on a much deeper level than the other books. They delivered messages I think I needed to hear at the time about propaganda and warfare, trauma, and human connection. And yeah, I continue to love those books. And in an opinion that will veer away from a lot of YA readers in BookTube, my favorite book, hands down, is Mockingjay. And to me, that's what really made the series come together and be important. As for Twilight, I did go ahead and I binged through the first 3 books before the movie came out. They were incredibly addicting in that soap opera way. I really did have a lot of fun reading them, even if I wasn't too fond of Bella's relationships with almost anyone, especially Edward. But by the time I got through the 3rd book, I was kind of burned out on it, and it just wasn't my cup of tea beyond that kind of sugar rush, so I have never read the 4th book. Question 17 is, would you rather have a British or an American accent? And my first thought for that is, technically there's a lot of different variations of both of those. In a way, what I really want is an accent of my own, probably from Baltimore City, at least because that's where I was born. I was raised in the county, but I was born in the city, so I should be able to say, I'm from Baltimore, hon. Do you want a wash? I can't do it. Question 18 is, did your mother go to college? Well, my mother is now an associate dean at a university, so she went to a lot of college, yes. Question 19 is, are your grandparents still married? And sadly, all of my grandparents have passed away, and one pair of them were separated at the time of the first person's passing, but the other pair were still together. Question 20 is, have you ever taken karate lessons? And yes, I have. I signed up when I was 11, and I remember so clearly how serious they were about this commitment and how you should be dedicated to it, and it makes me feel bad that I did give up on taking lessons before I got to the black belt, but... Question 21 is, do you know who Kermit the Frog is? Indeed, I do know who Kermit the Frog is, and in fact, his creator, Jim Henson, went to my graduate school, the University of Maryland, College Park, and that's where he got his start in all of this stuff, and there is now a big bronze statue of him and Kermit by the Student Union. Question 22 is, what was the first amusement park you went to? And honestly, I know there are closer ones that might hew closer to the title of this as well, but the first one I remember is that my parents took me and my sister to Disney World in Florida when I was 6. Question 23 is, what language other than your native one would you like to be fluent in? And, well, I just finished this book on Yiddish radio, and even though it didn't actually end on as much of a sad note as I would have thought. There is a sort of resurgence of love for Yiddish and klezmer music out there, but the language on its own is very much in the decline, and some of the only people who speak it now are the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, and die-hard linguists who want to keep it alive, and it makes me kind of want to join them because Yiddish was such a big part of Ashkenazi Jewish culture for so long. Question 24 is, do you spell the color gray with an A or an E? And honestly, I think I might be one of those bad people who doesn't think about it much and might even interchange them sometimes. Question 25 is your father bald? And he has certainly been inching closer and closer to there, and I used to be kind of mean and tease him about it, but... Question 26 is, do you know any triplets? And that's a nope. Question 27 is, do you prefer the Titanic or the Notebook? I assume we're talking about the two movies, and I've never seen the Notebook, so I suppose the Titanic. Titanic came out when I was a teenager, and so, you know, it was in the swoony Leonardo DiCaprio phase, and although for me, I think I felt that more during Romeo and Juliet, just saying. But what I mostly remember is, you know, I was listening to popular radio, Mix 106.5, your best music of the 80s, 90s, and today. And the Celine Dion song, My Heart Will Go On and On, was basically on the radio every other minute for the next year. And it just, I, like, hit a block, and I was like, I can't deal with it anymore. And my college roommate felt the exact same way. So last year, like for the 20th anniversary of the movie, we went ahead and we listened to the Celine Dion song, and we're like, nope, still can't do it. Still too soon. Question 28 is, have you ever had Indian food? And honestly, I don't think I really have. I can be really picky as an eater, although I've had naan, if that counts. Question 29 is, what is your favorite restaurant? And honestly, I don't really think I have one of those, although maybe by default it's Panera, and it's where I tend to go to do reading and writing a lot of the time. I've seen two things for question 30, which is, have you ever been to Nando's, which from Curtis Books and Films, I am led to believe is a restaurant in the UK. And I've also seen Olive Garden, which is a restaurant I'm familiar with. It's sort of a fast food Italian sort of restaurant. And if I were ever to set foot in one of those establishments, my father would promptly disown me. Question 31 is, do you belong to any warehouse stores? And no, I do not. I live in an urban area. I don't have a car, so it would be very hard to get out there. Question 32 is, what would your parents have named you if you were the opposite gender? And honestly, well, I'm not entirely sure, but I was named for my great-grandfather Raymond. He died a couple of months before I was born, so in Ashkenazi Jewish custom, my mother named me after a member of her family who had died. So I assume that she would have named me maybe an R male name for if I were a boy. Question 33 is, if you have a nickname, what is it? Some friends and family call me Rach. My mother tends to call me RB, which is Rachel Bachel. And for a while, my sister called me Rue. Actually, right now, my nickname, although maybe I only use it, is Aunt R for in honor of my niece. Question 34 is, who is your favorite person in the world? And that is the sort of favoritism that I do not like to play, so I will just go ahead and say my family. Question 35 is, would you rather live in a rural area or the suburbs? And I immediately want to ask, where's an urban area and all of that? Although technically, I suppose Silver Spring, Maryland is a suburb of Washington, D.C., so I guess I live in a suburb. Question 36 is, can you whistle? Nope. Question 37 is, do you sleep with a nightlight? And after watching so many videos disparaging of this question, I guess I should feel ashamed to say that I do indeed need to have a light on in the hall. I just get too freaked out when it's pitch dark. I just can't deal. I just need to have something. Question 38 is, do you eat breakfast every morning? And yes, I do, at least most mornings. Question 39 is, do you take any pills or medication daily? And yes, I do. I take iron for an anemia case, and I also take birth control, but not for the reason that birth control was created. Question 40 is, what medical conditions do you have? And for that, I want to refer you to something I will link down below. It is a Samantha Bee segment talking about the female reproductive system and how doctors basically know this about it. And every time there's something that's wrong with it, they just kind of go, here, throw some birth control at it. Question 41 is, how many times have you been to the hospital? I assume we're talking about as a patient. And a few instances do come to mind. When I was 4 years old, I was standing on a couch, and I had my hand up because I was pretending to be the Statue of Liberty. And then I jumped, because as we all know, the statue does move, and I broke my arm. Then when I was 14, I was rollerblading, maybe my first and last time, and I tripped and I sprained my ankle. Then, when I was 24, this is just so embarrassing because it's rather boring. I was walking swiftly at my grad school internship and I slipped on some water in the hallway and I broke my kneecap. And now I'm 34. I feel like I should wrap myself in saran wrap until July when I turn 35. I can't believe I've made it this far. Question 42 is, have you ever seen Finding Nemo? And I have. It's cute. I think people can underestimate these child movies made for children. That they can be relatively clever in their writing. Good for adults, too. Question 43 is, where do you buy your jeans? And it's really been too long since I've bought a pair of jeans to really answer that question. Question 44 is, what is the last compliment you got? And, well, I got a nice email from my supervisor earlier this week about my performance. And I was also recently at Panera editing a chapter of my novella, and I was looking over comments by my writing group, and, you know, a lot of them were critiques about things that I could make better, but there were a lot of compliments about the pacing and the way that I ended the chapter, so huzzah! Question 45 is, do you usually remember your dreams in the morning? And I remember bits and pieces, and sometimes I'm really confused if I wake up in a jolt. Like, I don't know, at one point I was certain that I couldn't talk to my Alexa because I didn't have internet. That is really rather boring, but mostly I remember sensations from dreams. I don't remember what happens, I remember how I feel. But it does tend to go away rather quickly. Question 46 is, what flavors of tea do you enjoy? And I have never been much of a tea drinker. So much of what I've tried just kind of tastes like dirty water. But I know that's not the case. I know that there's actual good tea out there. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I went way out into the boonies of Virginia with some friends, and we went to this really prim and proper tea house that was started by someone from the UK. And I'm sure I had some great tea there, and I really should have jotted down some notes about what it was. Question 47 is, how many pairs of shoes do you own? And I do have a handful of shoes in my closet, although a lot of them are worn down, and I really only wear 2 pairs of shoes with any sort of consistency, and really out of those, I only really wear my sneakers all the time, and in fact I should replace them now. Question 48 is, what religion would you raise your children to practice? Well, I'm Jewish, and if I had children, I would really want them to have a grounding of understanding in Jewish religion and culture. So I would indeed enroll them in Hebrew school to learn a little bit of Hebrew and to learn the stories and to celebrate the holidays and to be invested in the community. And I would also take them to other cultural events to understand the broader scope of Judaism. And I believe that usually kids start preparing for their bar bat mitzvah a year ahead of time, so around the time they were 12, I would, if I had these hypothetical children, I'd take them aside and I'd ask, so is this a commitment that you're ready to take on your own? Is this a step that means something to you to be included as a member, an adult member of the Jewish community? And if they said, I really don't like this, I really don't want to dedicate this time, I'd say, okay, fine, the door's always open if you change your mind. And if they did, I'd be happy, but I certainly would want it to be their choice by that point. But I would want them to have an understanding of the heritage and the culture and the stories behind their religion. Question 49 is, how old were you when you found out that Santa Claus isn't real? And, you know, I did grow up in an interfaith family, and I did love the idea of a magical man coming down at midnight, which was very late at that time for me, and coming to leave presents. So I love stories, I love magic, I love fantasy, so I think I always knew that he wasn't real. But he was a really fun idea. And question 50 is, why do you have I guess some places I've seen a blog or a Tumblr, or since I'm on BookTube, I figured I should answer, why do you have a BookTube channel? I think I have a lot of trouble with this question because I'm still not entirely sure of what's going on with me and BookTube. Because I certainly am not having the experience that I see a lot of other people having, and part of me doesn't even want to have it, because I know when people start getting a whole lot of subscribers, you get trolls and hate and all of that, and I really want to be somebody who connects with people on a personal level too, so I'm really grateful that I have with some of you, and I hope to with more of you in the future. I think that's about as well as I can sum it up. So that's where I'll leave this tag. I hope that you enjoyed it. I really hope it didn't run too long, especially since I have to go ahead and edit this and get to bed so that I can post it in the morning. And then I am going to a DC Author Fest. It's put on by the local DC Public Library and the Library of Congress, and we have panels and a keynote speaker, and then a few of the local authors in the area will be presenting their books in a happy hour at East City Bookshop, and so I'm very excited. I'm really hoping some members of my writing group will come too, and I'll leave a link down below just in case somebody gets to it before all the fun begins. And it is a free event open to the public, and it should be happening every year too, so I'm very excited. So thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.